What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTP Ravens Media, bringing Ravens content every single day. If you want to stay daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. Now, today, there's going to be a lot of videos coming out, the first of which will have been the final segment of our most recent Trust the Bank podcast recording, talking about O-lineman prospects and potentially the Ravens drafting them. So if you want to go check that out, please do so. I have two more videos that are going to be coming out later tonight, two different draft profiles, one on Ezra Gray, one on Tyquan Thornton. So make sure to check those out as well. But this obviously is going to be the final mock draft Monday. Now, there's a good chance that Joshua and I do a mock draft live on stream on Wednesday night. However, the mock draft Monday is a no trades individual mock draft. I don't get any redos, and I do it every single week. This is the 11th one. It's going to be the final one, and honestly, this is just about as good as I could hope. Obviously, it's not perfect. There are players that I would rather draft than some of the guys I got, but I love the way that it turned out. Please let me know any suggestions that you have. Hey, I don't like this player. Hey, this is what I'm doing in my mock drafts. Or, hey, you should keep an eye out for these players because if you do, I may do a draft profile on them and do some more research into them to see, what I kind of think about them. But getting into it, pick 14, I went with George Karlaftis. Now, every time I draft George Karlaftis or, someone else, I have to specify who wasn't there. All right, Jermaine Johnson was not available. None of the top-tier corners were available. It was between Karlaftis and Andrew Booth, Trent McDuffie, Jordan Davis, all players that I've talked about plenty of times, but I feel like at pick 14 for the Ravens, Karlaftis makes the most sense. Whereas if the Ravens were to trade down, but since this is a no-trade mock draft, I would love to go with Andrew Booth. But since it's no trades, I went with George Karlaftis, good at stopping the run. He can set the edge, be the, number 2 pass rusher outside of Odafe Oweh, as a physical front. Pick 45, I talk about it all the time. I feel like the Baltimore Ravens need to go with corner. My favorite second-round corner is Roger McCreary, and that's exactly who I went with. There were other guys available. Joshua and I's recent podcast recording, we talked about the second round, day 2 cornerbacks. And Roger McCreary was Joshua and I's guy because, one, he's coming out of the SEC. He's very pro-ready. He's a man coverage press corner, which is exactly what the Ravens are looking for in their cornerbacks to be able to do. So that's why I went with McCreary. There were other players available at the cornerback spot, but I felt like we had to get corner, and, McCreary I think is a good value pick. Pick 76, I went with my now second favorite player in this entire draft class, Troy Anderson, linebacker out of Montana State. I feel like I can never get Troy Anderson in these mock drafts. He always goes like 1 or 2 picks before me, but this time actually got him. If you don't know about Troy Anderson, he's maybe the most intriguing player in this entire draft. He was a all-conference quarterback. Yes, quarterback is in the passer of the football at Montana State, all-conference. Then he switched over to linebacker, was an all-conference linebacker. He is the most athletic draft pick at the linebacker spot in NFL Combine history. He ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. He's a freak athlete, great instincts, good ball skills. And I feel like the Ravens can utilize him because they won't need him to go out and be a day 1 starting linebacker. He can be a depth piece that can, 1, play excellent special teams, and 2, learn under Zachary Orr, learn under Mike McDonald, and eventually become the best linebacker on this team. And I'm a big fan of Patrick Queen, and I'm a big fan of Malik Harrison. But I really love Troy Anderson, and I think he could become that next great linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. Pick number 100, I went with my favorite player in this draft for the Baltimore Ravens to target, which is Marcus Jones, cornerback out of the University of Houston. The biggest thing with Marcus Jones is he's a return specialist, one of the best return specialist prospects of all time in the history of the draft. His comparison as a returner is Dante Hall, the human joystick, who's one of the best return specialists in NFL history. And then you add in the fact that he's also a very good slot cornerback. I think it fills 2 needs because I believe the Ravens need a punt and kick returner. That's not to say Devin Duvernay isn't fantastic at it. I believe he is fantastic at it. However, he needs to be utilized as a wide receiver more than he does as a return specialist. And I feel like it's taking away from his ability on the football field. Guys like Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, Dez Bryant, Odell Beckham Jr., they all returned kicks and punts at the beginning of their career. And then they were like, you know what? These guys are too good at wide receiver to be throwing out there on the kicks. I think Devin Duvernay has a chance to be a really good wide receiver in this league. I don't want the kick returning and punt returning to hold him back from being able to get on the field as much as possible. So Marcus Jones can replace that, and we lost out on our smaller slot cornerback in Tavon Young. And Marcus Jones is coming in, I think, just like Tavon Young did when he came out, as a mid-round pick. He could be a playmaker. He can get interceptions. And that's the thing. He's only 5'8", but he is a heavy hitter, and he attacks and drives to the football. A lot of 5'8" guys don't do that. He does. A lot of people wanted Tyrann Mathieu to come to the Baltimore Ravens because, he's a smaller guy, but he's not afraid of contact, and he's going to, put his body involved, and he's going to make big tackles. Marcus Jones is good in the run game. I made a full video talking about Marcus Jones. If you guys want to check it out, I could talk about him for hours. So I will get to the next pick already for the people that are tired of me talking about him. But he is the Simi Fehoko of this draft. If you guys don't know about Simi Fehoko, you're not an OG. If you are, shout out to you. Pick 110, I went with Zach Tom, offensive tackle out of Wake Forest. I felt like the Ravens need to go offensive line at some point in this draft. And I was looking at the players available, and Zach Tom was the best fit. Yeah, I could have gone with an interior offensive lineman, but I felt like at the value, at pick 110, Zach Tom was the best player available, and he filled a need, which is depth on the offensive line, so that's why I went with him. Not a lot to say about him. He's an offensive lineman, depth. I think he'd be a solid pick. Pick 119. This was actually a very difficult selection for me. I ended up going with Brian Robinson Jr., who I've talked about plenty of times. I did a draft profile on him. If you want to see more thoughts on him, go check that out. But I was deciding between Brian Robinson and Pierre Strong. Pierre Strong is the running back out of South Dakota State, and he's a speed threat, which is very different than a Brian Robinson Jr. And I ended up going with Brian Robinson because I feel like it's more important for the Ravens to get power than it is for them to get speed at the running back spot. I can see both cases. I would be completely happy with both picks. I think the Ravens should draft a running back, in the later rounds. Brian Robinson Jr., I think, can take over the former Gus Edwards role of the full-on power back and allow Gus to get into, the more agile running back that he is trying to be and the pass catcher that he's trying to be. Also, Brian Robinson Jr. is a fantastic pass blocker. At the running back spot, that can be valuable. Pick 128, I went with a guy that I'm going to be talking about a lot later today, Tyquan Thornton. All right, this is a wide receiver out of Baylor, and he is a speed, deep threat at good size at 6'2". I've talked about it. I think that he needs to, the Ravens need to go out and they need to get that X wide receiver. We lost Miles Boykin. Now there's potential for guys like Benjamin Victor. And I don't think we have any other players that bring what Tyquan Thornton would bring. He can get jump balls and he can burn guys. I'm a huge fan. I've talked about this plenty of times. I'm a huge fan of James Prochet. I'm a huge fan of Tylan Wallace. However, they are not speed threats. Those are possession wide receivers that can make, 50-50 contested catches, but they're not going to burn you. Tyquan Thornton is a guy that's going to burn you and can go up and make those big plays. Think about Hollywood Brown if he could make jump balls, because Hollywood Brown, he's a fantastic deep threat. However, if he's step for step with someone, you can't really throw it up because he's not going to go up and make that play like a DK Metcalf might. Tyquan Thornton can bring you that aspect of, hey, he can burn you, you can hit him, he can catch it, or, hey, it's 3rd and 12, Lamar Jackson's getting pressured, what is he going to do? He doesn't want to throw it up to Hollywood because Hollywood's probably not going to moss anybody. Tyquan Thornton, you can actually throw it up to in those types of situations, and at that size, that's how you can draw those pass interference calls. The Ravens are horrible at drawing pass interference calls because they can't throw jump balls because most of the receivers don't, or at least they don't give the opportunity to those wide receivers. That's what Tyquan Thornton can bring to this team. An element that I think they need. Big play, jump balls, X wide receiver. That's what he brings to the table. So I'm a big fan of him. And I'll be talking about him a lot more in the next video that I put out. Pick 139, I went with Luke Fortner, center, University of Kentucky. I think the Ravens needed to draft an interior offensive lineman. Whether or not it's a center or a guard, I don't really know what they need because we don't really know exactly what they want. Are they completely content? Are they going to have Patrick McCarr no matter what be the center? Or if someone gets hurt at the tackle spot, is he going to shift outside and then it's Tristan Colon Castillo? We don't really know. So Luke Fortner can be that backup center or even third string center, just backup offensive line piece. it's just very tough to judge what exactly the Ravens want to do on the interior of the offensive line. At tackle, I think it's pretty obvious. I think left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, maybe it takes until week 3 or whatever, but Ronnie Stanley's the plan. Morgan Moses at right tackle. That's set. Kevin Zeitler at right guard. But left guard, one of the Bens. Center, probably Patrick McCarry. But, his most recent center game for Patrick McCarry was not very good. So hopefully he's able to step up, but we shall see. Pick 141. I went with one of my favorite players in this draft. Again, I got a lot of players that I really love. Maybe it's because I love most of the players in this draft. I went with Zion McCollum, cornerback out of Sam Houston State. Now, he is a freak athlete. He's 6'4" and he's a cornerback. I mean, if that doesn't, catch your eye, I don't know what would. We don't know exactly what type of defense the Ravens are going to run. The assumption is that they are going to run a man coverage defense because that's what they've run traditionally. But Mike McDonald has talked about how he wants to bring something new. Zion McCollum, he's probably seen as more of a zone cornerback. But the biggest thing is he's a freak athlete, great size, good ball skills. And, you can develop him into something very, very good. Because think about Chris Westry. Chris Westry, I think a lot of people are big fans of. I'm a big fan of Chris Westry myself. The biggest thing with him was, he can't stay healthy. Zion McCollum, we could try and get to that same level as Chris Westry, and maybe get him to be, potentially even sliding over to safety, just because, of his size. He's just a versatile piece in that secondary. If you need to cover a tight end, he can be a guy because he's not going to get, tight end's not going to be much bigger. They're not going to be faster. They're not going to have much better ball skills than him. So, he just provides, an interesting gadget piece to throw into that secondary to utilize in certain situations. And when you're looking at a late 4th round pick, I think that's value right there. Getting a piece that's usable is valuable. And finally, pick 196. I talk about this guy all the time. My number 1 tight end in this draft. And people may say, number 1 tight end. This is not just a number 1 tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. This is the number 1 tight end in the draft. Jalen Wittermeyer, tight end, Texas A&M. He's the best pass-catching tight end in this draft. And he's a willing blocker. He's not an amazing blocker, but you can coach that up. He's very similar, I think, to Mark Andrews coming out. Very similar to Mark Andrews. That's my kind of comparison for what he can bring. He can stretch the field, great ball skills, very solid routes, good size. He's not Jimmy Graham. He's not 6'7". He's about 6'4", 6'5". He is going to be a very good tight end in the NFL, and I think the Ravens need that 3rd tight end. He can come in and be the 3rd tight end, run the routes that we normally throw Patrick Ricard on, who I like Project Pat. Not a good route runner. Overall, Jalen Wittermeyer would be a monster selection for whoever drafts him, but I hope it's the Baltimore Ravens. Guys, let me know what you think about this mock draft. I got a lot of players that I love. I got Roger McCreary, one of my favorite players, Troy Anderson, my second favorite player, Marcus Jones, my favorite player in the draft, Tyquan Thornton, big fan of him, Wittermeyer, my favorite tight end in the draft. So Brian Robinson, my favorite running back for the Ravens in this draft. I got a lot of players that I was really happy with, and I feel like I didn't overdraft any of them. I feel like I actually got really good value on a lot of them. So let me know what you guys think. Obviously, the 1st round pick is the most difficult because we don't know exactly who's going to be available. So I went with Karlaftis. I'm hoping, guys slide, or maybe the Ravens make a trade or something like that. But it's difficult to judge. Whereas, a 3rd round pick, taking a guy middle of the 3rd rather than late 3rd, people aren't going to get that upset about. But, when you take a guy middle of the 1st when people think, oh, maybe he should go in the 20s, it gets much more controversial. So let me know what you guys think. I'll put the full draft in the comment section down below. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Subscribe for daily Ravens content, and I'll see all of you again next time, and I cannot wait for the draft. Joshua and I will not be live streaming. However, what we will do is, just like last year, we will record, our reactions as the picks get announced. So we just record, and then we post it right after. It's just a 5 or 6 minute video giving our instant reaction to the pick. You get to see our faces light up or start crying, whether or not the pick is who we like or not. But thank you, everybody, for watching, and I'll see all of you again next time.